Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? This is the Sunday night Podding Shed live, coming to you from my shed, aka the Podding Shed. It is the 20th of November 2022, and hopefully you'll let me know in the comments that you can hear me, okay? Because I've been playing around with a few settings, so hopefully everything is working as it should. Now, today I want to talk about gardening notes. Do you keep a gardening journal? Do you keep some gardening notes throughout your period of gardening? Do you take down notes about or in a gardening journal of when you plant certain seeds, how well they do, what you harvest, that sort of thing? We'll get into that in a bit more detail in just a moment. But first of all, let's see if we've got anybody out there. First of all, I can see Ballycillian out there. He is saying good evening, everybody. Good evening to you. Adrian is out there saying good evening to you. Turbo Streamers out there. Good evening, Veg Podcasters. He said good evening to you. He also says the temperature has gone back up to normal here in Birmingham, so lit a log burner after some good graft on the plot the last 2 days. Excellent. It's been nice weather the last couple of days, hasn't it? So very, very pleased with what we've been doing. Oracle is out there. He says, hello, Veg Army, and hopefully my friend Stuart Jackson. If not, hi, Stuart, on the other outlet. We shall see. Andrew Norris is out there. Good evening, everyone, he says, and lists off a few people. Anybody? What else have we got? Hargrave Gas has joined us. Evening all. Hope you've had a good week. I need to be more focused. Not done much at all. Hopefully, the conversation we're going to have tonight is going to help with that. Anna Jones is out there. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Stuart Jackson is on YouTube again. He is here. Evening, Richard, and the Veg Army. Idaho Garden Girl. Evening, Richard. Hargrave Gas, Oracle, Adrian Turbo, Andrew Norris, Ballycillian. Just a few to get started. Kate is out there. Good evening to the wonderful Veg Army. Good evening to you. Let's just see. Just making sure. Chili Phil. Evening all. Hearing you loud and clear. Fantastic. I just want to make sure because I've played around with things and you never know if it's going to work. Rebecca is out there. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Who else have we got? Margaret is out there with my dad. Good evening to you. Laura W is out there. Good evening all. Good evening to you. Digwell Green Fingers. Hello, Porb. Hello, everyone in Welsh. Okay, I didn't know that until I read it. So you learn something new every day. I think that is everybody, but please feel free to comment and join in the conversation if you are staying in the background trying to be quiet. Don't worry, we don't bite. We're always happy to have a chat. Oracle saying, looking fresh, Richard. Must have been the wedding anniversary. No, just every now and then I get a little bit happy with the old razor. And it'll be that I won't probably touch it again for a few weeks. What I tend to do is cut it like this, and I'll just leave it to grow, and then I'll cut it back again. Same with the old hair on top. Since COVID, I've been doing that myself. Turbo Stream, I've been catching up on jobs on my allotment after my COVID a few weeks ago. Hardly went down for 3 weeks, but back on it now. So that seems like a good chance to get discussing about this conversation that I want to have tonight about a gardening journal. And the question I want to put to you is, first of all, do you keep a gardening journal and what do you use? Now, I'll bring this up as a few years ago, I did have a diary. It was a Christmas gift and it was a gardening diary. It had little anecdotes right throughout the entire diary with little comments and little old wives' tales that I would use throughout the year. But every time I did some gardening, I wrote it down in that diary. And it was a good way to keep up and keep track of everything. I haven't found that same diary since then, and I haven't actually, apart from my audio, I haven't really kept notes in the same way. And this is something I'm thinking about for next year, 2023. I want to go back. I'm a paper and pen person. I'm not very good with computers. I'm a paper and pen person. I want to go back to keeping notes on paper and pen. So first of all, Do you keep a diary or a journal? Stuart Jackson says, put more broad beans in the bed today, plus picks loads off the tree leaves, cropped and in the compost bin. Excellent stuff. Off to a fantastic start. Brian says, hi all. Good evening to you. Digwell is threw me a minute there. He popped milk on his face and let the cat lick it off. Yeah, it does feel a bit like that. It does feel a bit like that. Nicola has joined. Evening to everybody, he says. And yeah. What else? What else? Brian says, my videos have replaced pen and paper. Now, this is interesting. This is interesting because I would say the same. I found that what I tend to do now is take audio notes. I've always got a microphone with me, so I tend to record everything on audio. And that actually, as you hear with the podcast, works out really nicely. I do make videos, and I've started making videos again lately, but they don't cover everything that I do, which is where I'm wondering what you guys do. What do you do to keep notes, and what details do you do? Turbo Stream. I make no notes. I make no notes to what or when I plant on the plot. Only take photos. I know if I started a journal, it would only last a few weeks before I got bored of doing it. Good point. Good point. I think getting bored is quite a key thing you said there, and we've got to try and keep it entertaining or keep it something that we can keep referring back to. And the thing that always I think of is I often hear of professional gardeners and those that are shall we say, high up. They turn around and say that they always taking notes and they keep it in their diary and their notebook of everything that happens, which is why, again, I'm thinking of going down this route. Stuart Jackson, I write everything down in the book when sowing, pricking out, potting on. Then when I pot the plants in the garden, I do the same at school. Fantastic, Stuart. So you're probably going to be a key one that we're going to be asking more information of tonight, if you're happy to share it. Anna Jones says, my main method of recording the garden is photos throughout the year. I never delete any, as I always look back on them to see what needs changing or improving later on. So well worth doing. Now, I'm guessing when you say you take photos, I'm guessing it's the digital photos, not the old film photos. How do you keep your photos organized do you have a file on your computer system that you go back through, or is it just you upload them and that's that, or even on your phone, even on your phone? That's I'm saying I want to dig a bit more into. Jenny says, had a great day outside walking around the garden with my garden book, planning next year and reading my notes. It's just a hardback A4 notebook. It's a diary, notes, plans and seeds stock log all in one. Again, this is what I want to find out more about. I want to hear what you use and what you take a note of. So yeah, great stuff. David Williams has joined. Good evening to you. Hope you are well. Excuse me. I'm purposely not brought a cup of coffee in with me tonight to try and stop myself from doing that. Jenny says, also photos. They're a great way to log and compare to last year. Oh, here comes the hiccups now. Sorry. Oracle says, I have never kept a journal to tell the truth. The plan always goes tits up halfway through, as you always replan somewhere. So this is the thing that I want to find out with keeping a journal is that you may have, I think what you're talking about more is your plans. And I always say plans do change. My plans are never set in stone until I've definitely figured it out. But by keeping a journal, you can log all those changes as what I'm thinking and why you're changing them and refer back to. Rebecca says, I'm a bit hit and miss with diaries. I start well and then get busy in the garden and forget about them. That's why I enjoy Instagram. It's great to look back on. I treat it like my diary. Now, yeah, good thinking there, using Instagram or your photo site as a login, as somebody mentioned earlier. Nicola, I've written down stuff in the past and now just do stuff when I feel like it. Fair enough. It's all things that add to the content. Chili Kate, so Chili Phil brought me a diary when we got the plot, but not really used it. We take lots of photos and keep them in a Facebook album. Oh, yeah, a Facebook album. Didn't think of that as a good one. That's a very good one. So Amanda in the Facebook group, lovely to see you. Evening all. I have a notebook for each year and I write to-do lists for that month and a little recce of what I've done after each visit. This year I aim to make more notes around observations of what's growing well and what's not, etc. Again, this is what I want to find out people are using their journal for. What details are you taking down? So I use gardening journal. Right now I'm using a small notebook from the dollar store. I make videos, but I back up by writing down dates when sown, transplanted, fertilized, etc., etc. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to remember, I often feel, and this is my attitude, when I'm making a video for YouTube or Facebook, I'm making a video. I feel very different to doing something in a garden. It's about making a video, to focus on making a video. So this is where sometimes I feel it changes a bit. David Williams says, I barely managed to use labels, never mind a journal. Labels, big thing I say, use labels. Absolutely use labels. Andrew says, I keep a house book in the country which lists the job that need to be done and the progress of the veg and orchard. It's important I can see everything on paper. I can't trust my memory. Now, this is actually, Andrew, you've raised a very good point about not being able to trust in your memory. And this is something I found when I took on my allotment. I made a video of when I first got to my allotment and had a look. And it's not until I went back and saw that video that I suddenly realized just how far my allotment has came and what it looked like in the beginning. So you're right, memory isn't great. But when you go back to what you started with, you suddenly realize how far you've came. Brian says, I used to take notes, records of weather was always my main entry. Records of weather. That's good. That's good. Let's just scan through. David Williams is saying, where do you said my name and coughed? I'm isolating, having caught COVID for the first time. Keep yourself well. It's not pleasant when I've had it. Make sure you look after yourself. Tab of stream. I moved my photos from my phone to a year folder, i.e. allotment 22, then back that up on my Mac at the end of the year. Excellent. This is a good idea. It's all a good idea. Tabby Stream says half a teaspoon of vinegar gets rid of hiccups. I remember that. I don't know. Since I had trouble with potting compost last year, I've started including that info to my notebooks. Yeah. This is what I want to find out. Now, I will come back to these comments in just a second. Now, the reason I'm asking all this is that I'm currently sort of designing my own gardening notebook I'm going to be using throughout 2023. And I've been sort of getting myself a few ideas on what I need to record and what I need to do. One of the key things that I want it to be is that I'll tell you what I've got as examples. Now, the first thing that I've used in the past, let me get rid of that, sorry. And all the details, but don't worry about that, is this little notebook here, which is it comes from my army surplus shop. It's a waterproof pad, and I like this because it goes in the pocket. If it gets wet, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's great for any allotment, but it doesn't really have any details. And I'm trying to find this paper that I could use to print my own stuff. So that's one of the notebooks that we could use. As you can see, it's not particularly big, fits in the pocket nice and easy. Next thing that I bought this years ago. It came from a shop that begins with W, and it is called a planting book. So again, we'll come from the above. Let me bring it in. You have to excuse my handwriting when you see this. In fact, that one can go because that was a note I made for a podcast I was doing. Yeah, again, this is just a notepad with a couple of pencils and some sticks for labels. So I didn't feel this was exactly what it said, a planting book. Didn't feel this was exactly how it was sold. And then finally, oh, hang on, actually. And then in terms of size, it's not quite pocket size, but it's not too big to carry around. Then the final notebook that I've brought is called the Allotment Gardener Logbook. I think this came from Amazon. I could be wrong. And you see, it's an A4 size book, so it's pretty big. We'll bring it up from underneath. The Allotment Gardener. Gardening is my favourite therapy. things to do in January, etc. And that goes right through notes, etc., etc. Just a chance to take a few notes in different places, which I kind of like the idea of, but I always feel that's when you come to the end of a year, okay, that one will be done. But if you start halfway through the year, it's a bit pointless. You've lost half of the book. So I've been working a few things out with that. Let's go back to the comments. And I should say, actually, I've just realised I haven't put the link up. If you want to call in, where is it? The phone line is open 07307 135 174. Where were we? Where were we? So Stuart Jackson says, I start with the date for every comment. I started this last year as it helps me with how long different plants to germinate. So hopefully they will know what percentage of seeds will grow best. Yes, these are the things I'm thinking about logging down. Date, when things are germinated, etc., etc. Oracle says the changes come from boredom. After years growing, your journal is in your head. It's just when you want to paint, sew, etc., etc. Yeah, I mean, it's just for me a source, a bit of fun, but also I think it make interesting reading in years in the future. Rebecca says, best way to garden, do stuff when you feel like it. I do agree with that. I do actually agree with that, because I actually believe that as a human species, we are more in tune than what we give ourselves credit for. That being said, I did see a few years ago, somebody planted out cucumbers, tomatoes, and peppers on our allotment, and it was the middle of February, if I remember correctly, or was it March? Something like that. Far too early anyway. And sure enough, cold weather came along and killed a lot of them. So there is something to be said for that. Turbo Stream, I don't even write a jobs list down to do on the plot. As long as I do a few jobs each visit, then I'm happy. See, I'm very different to that. I always start the beginning of the week with writing out a to-do list. And I'll talk about this on the podcast tomorrow, funny enough. But I start off with writing a to-do list, just so then I've got a few ideas in my head of what I want to do at the weekend and if I need to get anything prepared. I'm all about trying to be prepared. Digwell, photos and videos for me. That's how I started YouTube, and then add the info to my spreadsheet. Let us know about your spreadsheet, Digwell. That would be great to hear more about this. I'm terrible at journaling, says Kate. Absolutely hate my own handwriting. I'm with you on that. I use Instagram as my kind of diary and love looking back at photos. Yeah, I hate my handwriting as well, so I'm completely with you on that. But it's only for me. This is the way I'm defining it. It's only for me. Jenny says, I read my notebook in the winter, highlighting my do different and do again. Never agains. Sorry, let me start this again. I read my notebook in the winter, highlighting my I would do different, do again, and never again tasks. Then my new notebook page, one is made of last year's results, good or bad, a list of what needs doing. You know, this is a type of thing I want to know about this for the one I'm trying to build. Lessons learned from last year is quite a good one. I'm just trying to see if I've got something I can take a note of that down. There we go. Got a whiteboard on you. I've always got a whiteboard somewhere. Lesson learned from last year. Write that down. Lesson from last year. So yeah, fantastic. That's exactly what I think I might add to this book that I'm semi-creating. Jenny also says, from the back, I log every pack of seeds so I know what I have or what I need to source. Also helps me identify varieties I do or do not like. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I mean, I have far too many seeds to list, but yeah, it would be good to keep a track of them. I write on each seed packet, then I copy the information in my gardening book when I get back indoors. Cool. The kids see them, Richard. I know what Santa is bringing me. The kids see him. Kids see what? Kids see what? So have I missed something? Andrew says, I use my house book like a scrapbook. It's A4 size, so stick C packet labels and tags from fruit trees, etc. And I make interesting reading later on. You know, I didn't think about sticking those labels that you get on your fruit trees and stuff. That's actually a very, very good idea. And you mentioned A4. Personally, I mean, what I'm making mine out is a Filofax like this, so that I can then take it out and reuse it and what have you. This also fits in my bag for work. Come on. Sorry about that. I knocked the wire. I knocked the wire as we were talking there. Um, yeah, this is what I tend to, this is my Filofax. This is my actually for content creating and keeping track of things. But this is what I'm going to be using for my garden notebook, this sort of size Filofax, and printing a bits of pages off for it. And I can carry it around nice and easy, etc., etc. And always got pens in here. Always got pens in here to use. Right, Nicholas says, Ordnance Survey do A4 waterproof paper for $24.99 a ream. I did not know that. That's very useful to know. Ordnance Survey. I'm going Ordnance Survey. Take a note of that. Take a note for that. Chili Kate says a whiteboard is a great for to-do list. It feels good to wipe things off. I absolutely love whiteboards, I'll be honest with you. I use whiteboards all over the place. Great for just quickly jotting things down. I've also got this other Filofax that I use for making notes, which is also a bit like a whiteboard in that the pens and everything wipe off, just so it doesn't waste paper. But then it's things that I want to keep hold of, so they don't want wiping off. I'm not good at technology, but is there an app for this sort of thing? There is, I think. There's Veg Plotter, which is a online gardening design program, which Richard Lewis, who sometimes appears on this live show, he created, and it does have an app for keeping photos and other details and notes for that as well. So there might be something to look at. But as for an actual app, it could be something that we look at creating at some point as well. Toberstream, I used to work in a printing firm. Everything was scheduled and planned each day. Perhaps I now just go with the flow after 30 years of it. Yeah, I mean, if you are used to or spent your lifetime being scheduled and planned, I can see why having things scheduled. I mean, for me, it's not so much about scheduling or planning. It's more about just trying to keep myself organized. Partly because there's always that thing I want to do that I forget about, or forget to take a drill down or something, which is very important to me. Digwell says Filofax, not heard that for a while. Turbo Stream and Kate are saying I've gone off. Hopefully I've came back. I accidentally pulled the lead, so apologies for that. Chili Field, personally, I prefer an app. Hate writing things down and always have my phone on me. Even better if it was an app that we could both add to from separate devices. So I once actually did, I'm making a note of the app. I once actually did make the Veg Grower podcast into an app. Unfortunately, the actual making of the app was pretty easy, but putting it into costs or publishing it proved too expensive, so I never actually done it. But it could be something we look at, especially if you're a member of the supporters club. We could possibly add this in as a way of on the club. You log into your account and you make notes on there. That notes on website. I'm making a note of that. That's something I'm definitely going to add in to for members of the supporters club if I can find a time to do it. Um, Idaho, I tried a popular online gardening journal. It's too complicated for me to input the info. That can sometimes be my problem with online or computer things as well, which is why I'm no good with spreadsheets because I'm absolutely useless at keeping them jotted down. Which is why I prefer pen and paper. But I would be looking to take that pen and paper and transferring it on to an app or something. Stuart Jackson, one thing I've started this year is keeping every pack of seeds, so I notice if different seed companies have different germination. Excuse me. Christ, Stuart, you must have a lot of seed packets. I'm of the point because I'm such a terrible hoarder at the best of times. I'm of the point now that I just want to get rid of anything that I don't need anymore. So um, yeah. I don't don't keep hold of any of the old packets of seeds, but that would be interesting to see what they say. Oracle says, when I was in the army, 22 years for doing everything by the book. I'm sure Digwell knows what I mean. Yes, yeah, I'm sure that is. Digwell says, I think you find it's $24.99 for 25 sheets of paper, £1 a sheet. Yeah, but it's waterproof, so it's not your standard stuff. And is it printable? Is the next question. Jenny says, I used to have a second FBook account private to log and evidence my kids' home education. All dated, and they do pop up memories on this day that could work for gardening. In fact, might do one myself. Yeah, memories, pop up memories. That's a good idea as well. That is a very good idea. Yeah, yeah. Stuart says he likes the idea for an app. Okay, we'll look into that. Turbo Stream, I quite like the surprise of gardening sometimes. Today I found that I planted winter onions in between the field beans. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You know, I love it when things surprise you. I found some garlic that I didn't plant, but it grew better than any of my other garlics. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Anne Wright says, as I do autumn clear up, I get ideas for changes and jot them down in a cheap spiral bound notebook, plus draw veg planting plan and to-do lists for next year. Book gets well scribbled in as the year progresses. So that's again, this is coming back to what I'm trying to find out. People are using the spiral books, which is great, nice and cheap, easy to get hold of. I've got hundreds and hundreds of spiral books in my office that I tend to buy because I think I need them and end up with far too many. But I do like this idea, just keeping ideas of changes and jotting them down, etc., etc. Idaho says several years ago, I'd used the app that Steve's Seaside Allotment used. I spent a lot of time on it. Ultimately, the pound stopped me using it. I did incorporate some of his ideas into my own records. What app was it he recommended? I like Steve's Seaside Allotment. He's a lovely Blake. But yeah, price is always going to be something. This is cost prohibitive is obviously a big factor. A lot of the things that are free, or especially when it comes to app, get those annoying adverts, which I feel on something like this prevents you from using it. But then the cost of producing an app is quite expensive if you think of all the programming and everything. And then publishing it, it was £100 to publish it to Apple. I can't remember how much for Google and what's the other one? I'm an Apple person, so the other Google Play Store. That was it. I can't remember how much the prices were. That was £100 each year. It was a yearly payment just to have an app on available. It's yeah. Digwell says Steve uses Airtable. I've never heard of it myself, so interested to find more about that. Stuart Jackson, hopefully I will be able to keep all the empty packets unless someone else has tidied up my gardening shelves. Yes, Yes, I know how you feel when people tidy things up that aren't theirs. But yeah, Airtable. I've also confirmed by Idaho. Is that like a what's it called? What's it called? Spreadsheet type thing that you can have on the go? Because when it comes to spreadsheets, I'm absolutely useless with spreadsheets. I think I've said this before. I've been making things over the last couple of weeks. I've been learning certain things that I can now do with spreadsheets, which are probably the type of thing most people can do when they are taught at school. It's complete and utter um, what's the word I'm looking for? Complete and utter um, learning curve for me when it comes to um, spreadsheets, etc., etc. Digwell says it's open source database. So my understanding with databases is it's all about logging. Yeah, um, I have to find out more about that and see where we go. But you guys have got me thinking about creating this on the website for Supporters Club or an app or something. That's not a bad idea. So we kind of got from what I'm just clearing this out because I want to make lots of notes now. Kind of got the idea of what people are using to keep their notes and keep their records. Let's have a quick look at some of the photos and then we'll come back and I've got a bit more that I want to find about. So what photos have we got this week? So Turbo Stream, he has harvested this fantastic collection of vegetable parsnips, swede, beetroot. Looks absolutely delicious. Now he mentioned his field beans earlier, and these are them growing nice and strong. Looks absolutely fantastic. Behind here was some onions he mentioned earlier that he didn't know about. Just goes to show how full of surprises gardening can be. Chili Phil and Chili Kate have got this great collection of chilies they've harvested. What a beautiful colours and a good, good load of beautiful looking chilies. He has listed all the different varieties on the Facebook group if you want to go and check that out. Kate has also sent us this picture from yesterday on the allotment. I think it was yesterday, if I remember correctly. And those blue skies, what a lovely day it was on the allotment. I was down the allotment myself yesterday, enjoying it. Stuart Jackson has found this bargain. This is like a seed planting kit, complete with a mini propagator, a dibber. I'm never sure what those two-pronged things are meant to be, but there's something that can be used for gardening. Labels and so on. He bought 12 of these kids from a charity shop for £3. Fantastic stuff. Anne, I haven't seen tonight, but she's all the way in Montreal, Canada. She's been making chili jam. Looks absolutely delicious. I love chili jam, one of my favorite things. And she's made plenty to keep her going for a while. Now, Nicola, who I know has joined us tonight, she has been sorting out her strawberries. As you can see, lots of strawberry runners have been dug up here with some really good root system, it has to be said. But these strawberry runners have been used to make some new plants. Hopefully get growing, get established, and go on for next year to produce excellent strawberries. So please do keep sharing those photos. Post them in our Facebook group. Send them to us via social media or email me, richard@theveggiegroundpodcast.co.uk. Excuse me. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Stuart Jackson, spreadsheets is a little above its skills. That's why I use paper and pen. Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I'm the same. I'm not very good with IT at all. Paper and pen, I always have available. For me, it's just more convenient. That being said, I am trying to expand my IT knowledge to try and do a bit more with it. Digwell says that Steve's is free to copy and alter as you need. I do recall seeing it, funnily enough, but as I said, I'm not very good with it. Now, Nicola says, I sometimes use an old diary that I haven't used for making notes for gardens when I do. You can buy much cheaper than a notebook, just cross through the date. Then you have a date you did the job, planting, sowing, etc., etc. Yes, I mean, an old diary is what I used in the past, and that was a data view diary, if I remember correctly. The annoying thing that I had with the diaries, and this old diary probably isn't such a problem with, but the old diaries used to annoy me because they would always have Saturday and Sunday being half a page each, whereas all the weekdays were a full page. And I always wanted it the other way around. I wanted Saturday and Sunday to be the full page each because that's the day I would be gardening. Just slightly annoyed me with an old paper diary. But I guess they are mainly worked around people's weekly working life. Steve at Seaside Allotment is what I consider super tech. I'm a dinosaur tech. Yeah, I'm with you. He comes from a background in business as well, so he has a lot of skills that are transferable from that, such as keeping spreadsheets, keeping details, and things like that. So yeah, very good stuff there. Jenny says, still need to finish my onions and garlic. It's just been so wet. The village flooded this week. Hopefully, I'll get it in tomorrow. Yes, yes. We all know about flooding. We're lucky here where I live. We haven't been too bad, but we went to Bognor yesterday to walk the dog, and we might as well got a boat out. It was so flooded. Terrible, terrible. But that's winter for you. Um, Good idea. I used old envelopes, etc., to scribble notes on. Yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. And great photos from Anna Jones. Indeed, all great photos. So what I want to find out from you is I'm going to have to find my notes that I've made for this show actually to list out what I was thinking of. But what I want to know is what notes do you keep track of uh, in your notebooks. So, what information do you record? So, I'm thinking for me, if when the one that I'm creating for myself is to include a seed sowing calendar, just a rough idea. You often get them in magazines at this time of year, a rough idea of when seeds can be sown. Then I want to have a weather tracker, and this is this slumps thing. I'm definitely going to be adding, but we have a very different system for it. Amanda, for my Christmas present, which isn't far away, she's brought me a weather station that we're going to put up in the garden around Christmas, of course, and connect up to hopefully the website and a few things like that, and keep track of weather conditions through that. But I'm also going to include that with the with my gardening notes as well. Um, Harvest tracker. I want to Right, I'm back. I hope you didn't hear me. I hope you didn't hear me swearing a lot there. Um, the signal just dropped out. Apologies once again. The last couple of weeks, we seem to be having real trouble with our signal. I don't know what's going on. Weather, possibly the weather. Right, What was I saying? Um, right, where were we? Where were we? Termis. Oh no, I'll come back to that in a second. I was just listing out the things that I'm taking note of, and I'm not sure where I cut out at. So I mentioned, hopefully you heard what I said about keeping track of the weather with the weather station that Amanda's buying me. We're also going to have, I did mention this just now, an extra little sensor that's going to go in a greenhouse so we can track the weather in that as well. Harvest tracker, so I can keep track of what I've been harvesting, when, how much quantities, what we've made with it, what meals we cooked. What wildlife we're seeing out on the allotment and in the garden as well. I think that's going to be a small thing because I cannot necessarily identify every single bird, but just something I think is worth keeping track of. To-do lists, of course, I'm a big fan of to-do lists. Our gardening goals, which we've spoken about before. So there's some of the, as well as a what I've been tackling on the allotment. They're the things that I am looking at keeping track of. But what do you guys keep track of? So TurboStream, next year I'll put a timeline up in my shed for when to sow and plant things. The one on Garden Focused is a good one as you can tailor it to your location. Yeah, Garden Focused is actually a really good website for finding a lot of those sort of information out, including that. Yeah, absolutely. Brown Seed Catalogue was also a diary log this year. Loads of space to log your sowing notes, harvest dates, etc., etc. Yeah, I'm trying to think, did I get a brown seed catalogue? I get so many seed catalogues that it probably has arrived, but I've thrown it to one side. Nicola says diaries in June, July time for sale can be pence. It's a good idea. It's a very good idea. Make a saving where you can. Idaho says, I make notes on so many older envelopes and the back of junk mail, especially when watching YouTube gardeners. I've had to be careful what I throw away. Might have important info on it. I do exactly the same. If I'm making notes, it's whatever's to hand. But then I end up with bits of paper everywhere, which is why as I say, my Fidofax is starting to help me just be a little bit better with that sort of thing. I got it from TurboStream. I got it from on here, Digwell, full of useful information. I remember where we told you about it, if I remember correctly. I use my junk mail for paper pots, says Stuart Jackson. Yeah. TurboStream says I've gone off again, but that's happened. I bought the Charles Dowden calendar last year. I still have it. Just look at the date he recommends to plant seeds. See, I always find the dates recommended to plant seeds is very different depending on where you are in the country. I've always said I can get away with doing things a lot earlier because I'm quite mild. But if I was up north, it would be very, very different. Yeah, a couple of people were saying I'm frozen. There you are. I'm back. Yeah. Jenny says, I log sowing, planting out. Let's make a note of these. Sowing. Planting out, harvest, log germinate. I may log germination, but I'm often too busy to note that. I note working well or failed, what I change or enjoy, a good or bad variety and weather. Yeah. Yeah. Stuart Jackson says some new words, and TurboStream says, I've never heard such language. I hope you didn't hear me swearing. I really hope you didn't hear me swearing. I also log what companion planting is best, what the bees are enjoying the most, and what wildlife I have visiting. E.g., I only saw one frog this year. Last year, I couldn't keep up counting them. Yeah, this is the sort of thing I'm thinking about logging. So this is very, very interesting, Jenny. Exactly right. Alison O'Brien says, evening all. And Stuart Jackson says, I also record any plants that have failed. Yeah, I absolutely want to find out about any plants that have failed. I always believe that we learn more in our failures because that's often where we learn the most. Digwell, Garden Focused is great for that, Richard. Input your talent, it tells you the best sowing dates, etc. You're right. Yeah, no, that's absolutely why I think Garden Focused is such a brilliant website for that. It's a bit clunky in how it looks, etc., etc. But the information is second to none, and the fact that you can tailor it to where you live. But even then, you've still got to pay attention to the weather. As I say, what year was it? We had a frost in May. Was it last year or the year before? Maybe the year before that. I cannot remember. But it was we had a couple of times when we had a frost in May, which is very unusual. I mean, we haven't had a frost here for a while, um, and that could kill off any plants. And that's where keeping notes and keeping track of these sort of things has a big difference. Jenny says, I got the Charles Dowding diary in a charity shop the other day, £2. I have also popped to the calendar on my Xmas list. Now, because you've mentioned that, funny enough, Jenny, next week or next Sunday's live show, I want you all to come up with a gardening Christmas list. Things you would like to find under the tree. I know. It's Christmas is, well, it will be a month away, under a month away when we go live next Sunday. So keep those on the list ready for that. Excuse me, sorry, I don't know what goes on. Idaho says, I do keep a record of germination. Chilies take a long time, and so I keep track of how many days have gone by. Yeah. This is exactly right. We want to keep track of how long chili varieties may take to germinate and how long and how productive they are. Again, this is the idea of for me keeping notes, is that by looking over our notes and seeing if there's a pattern, like chilies takes a very long time to germinate, but you only get a few chilies, then perhaps it's worth changing them for a more productive variety. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Digwell says, absolutely, Richard. Always play it by ear when it comes to weather. Yeah. I mean, as I say, the garden focus thing is absolutely brilliant for giving you a very good guide, a very, very close guide. But you still got to pay attention to the weather. Jenny says it's a long list for the Christmas one. Yeah, well, that's all right. Digwell says, so generous. You are welcome. Apologies once again. Lucky you, Jenny, for the Christmas list. Indeed, Christmas list being prepped now. Yeah, well, I know what I'm getting for mine, so it's all sorted. Evening, Idaho garden girl. Hope you're well. And right, I draw a new plan each year, list veg sown, and follow up my thoughts on crop quality and quantity, given a 5-star rating. That 5-star rating I like as well. 5-star rating, yeah. This is interesting. Oh, I find it very interesting what everyone is keeping log of and why. It really does help. For me, find out what interests or what people are more interested in rather than what I think people are interested in. Email, right? Okay. I think we are caught up with all the comments. Yeah. So I guess the next thing I want to know is what size pads, and I know Andrew said it's an A4 A4 pad that he uses. For me, I go for the A5 or the Fidofax just for convenience of carrying more than anything. But what size would it be for you if it was in a notebook form? Of course, if it's on your phone or it's always in your pocket, which is probably more convenient, provided, of course, your phone is charged up. Jenny says, I've been very lucky and had a letter printed in Kitchen Garden Mag, so a £25 voucher. Thinking of buying some pop-up cloches, or do I save it? Cannot decide what to do. Has your letter already, has that Kitchen Garden magazine already been published? Quick question for you. I know when I was in there, it took a few months. Yeah. Turbo Stream says, I do draw out a rough plan of where I will plant things out in the coming year. I've been spreading compost on the beds I will use next year. Yes, well, as you know, if you listen to the Monday's podcast, was it Monday? 2 weeks ago. I can't remember now. 2 weeks ago, I worked out what I'm growing where with my crop rotation plans, which took me a while to figure it all completely out. I wrote by building extra beds and working it out, and I had a conversation with you guys, figuring out how I could do crop rotation on my allotment. Um, so that rough plan again is something that would be transferable into a book. Jenny says it's being published. Okay, I will go and have a look and see if I can see it. Although I can't remember if I brought a kitchen magazine recently. Digwell says, good idea, and right, do similar 0, never again, 5 must grow every year. I'm liking this. I'm liking this idea. It's been done. Anne says A5 as well for a convenience of carrying this book around. I think A5 is just the right size. A4 is great. As I say, that's an A4 book. It's great, for getting plenty of space to write things down. But I cannot, unless I can't carry a big bag with me, it's not so easy to carry around all the time. My file effects, as I say, my content book, just so convenient for things that I do to make my life easier. Very convenient. Very convenient. I can carry that with me all the time. And if it's with me all the time, it means I'm likely to use it, especially sat down around a coffee making notes. And while I'm at work, I make notes as well. A4 for desktops, A5 for the car, etc., etc. Excuse me. Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Excellent. Stuart Jackson also says, my book is A5. The book only costs £2 from a card shop. It should last at least 2 years. Excellent. And Jenny says, A4, I like room for my writing, so I have half a chance of reading it. Also, maybe little drawings or ideas for structures. Yeah. I mean, this is something when I've been designing this book, I might do an A4 and an A5 version, to be honest with you. But I've just feel for me, A5 in the file effects is just convenient for getting it to carry around. One of the other reasons that I'm using it in a file effects is that I'm not on the one I'm designing. I'm not setting it so that the dates are relevant for that only date. I'm doing it that you can just print off the same template and you just fill in the date and it's reusable template, if that makes sense. So you haven't got to constantly try and or reduces waste. Reduces waste is the word I'm looking for. Oracle, not get it for free in a school, Stuart. Possibly could. Mind you, schools can't afford books at the moment, from what I understand. Idaho says the paper in my little dollar store books are about 5 inches by 8 inches, which is probably. I'm trying to think. I think the A5 size is, I think, what you Americans call personal size. But I could be wrong on that. It's only what I've been hearing while researching lately. Okay, we have no money at the school. Exactly right. Now, there's something mentioned earlier about waste, and this is a slightly off-topic subject, but something I'm going to hit out there because it's a subject very close to my heart. I hate waste, especially food waste. And we all know that there's a lot of food waste that does go on. We are very lucky in this town that we have what's called a community fridge. That's where a group of volunteers go around to a lot of supermarkets and cafes at the end of the working day and collect any food that they have to get rid of that can't be sold. And my wife goes down there quite regularly on a Saturday and collects a few items, just so it doesn't go. It's to prevent waste. It's not about food poverty. It's about preventing food waste. And trust me, we get quite a bit of food out of it. It is absolutely amazing what we get. What we get. But yesterday, my wife went down there and she said the week before they had lots of tomatoes and should she get any if there was any more. And I said, yes, of course. Well, we can use tomatoes. Go get as many as you can get. Well, she came back with a huge crate of tomatoes. And I weighed these tomatoes out. We had 10 kilograms of tomatoes that was going in the bin. We have now turned all these tomatoes. We've made ketchup, soup, pasta sauce, chutney. We've used it all up in a day. Well, we used it all up, pull it into something so it can be frozen, etc. But I'm a big believer that we shouldn't be wasting food. And this just really blew my mind how much was going to waste and how useful that could be. Let's go back to the comments quickly because I've just gone out on a complete tangent there, but I had to get that off my chest. Digwell says, I'm going out on a limb here and ready full of flack, but I also use my Galaxy S22 Ultra phone with its little S Pen for making notes and sketches. I can read my scribble and change it to text. Yes. I think Apple do something like the Apple Pen as well. Again, I'm all for using whatever you have available. Again, I always have my phone on me, but I'm not very good at using it to take notes. I should be, because it's always on me. I'm just not so good. I don't even really use it for taking photographs anymore, purely because I like to use my DSLR camera. I spent a lot of money on my DSLR camera, and I want to get the most out of it. So I completely, again, it's whatever people have to hand, and I think that's the important thing. I would probably get detention if I stole a book from school. Yeah, I know how that feels. Oh, good. That's what I need, Digwell. Only I can read my writing. I'm exactly the same, my handwriting. That's why anything I have to send out is printed. I have terrible handwriting. I can read it, and if I take my time, and most people can read it. If I'm either in a rush or tired, then my handwriting just goes completely out the window. I'm terrible. It's one of those things. When I was at school, every teacher would say, your handwriting is bad, no matter what I did. One of those things that, like IT, I wish I could improve on, but probably too late now. But going back to what Digwell said, and I'm just thinking out here, going out on a limb and ready for flack to use the Galaxy S22 Ultra phone. Technology these days, has it made it easier to keep track of things? Is the fact that so many of us can, and in fact, that's something I should add, the ability if we print off photos or take photos to add to these little notebooks in some form. But has that made it easier for everybody to keep track, do you think? Has it made it more accessible? I certainly feel a lot of YouTubers and Instagrammers are by keeping these logs and keeping this content up and going, makes it all the more easier to see actually what goes. I mean, there's still smoke and mirrors that goes on, but we get a better idea of how much work goes on inside an allotment or inside a garden throughout the year. Or is it easier, do you think, using it? Jenny says, we have a community fridge. It's amazing. Great to help with the cost of living and great to stop it going into landfill. I love the challenge of ways to cook the food. Also, Too Good To Go app is good. Yes, I've heard about Too Good To Go. But yeah, but my wife goes, oh, yeah, down to this community fridge. The amount of food that they give away, I mean, we get... Quite often she comes back with yum-yums or donuts for us as well as a little treat. Just scary how much food goes to waste. And everybody knows I hate the fact that food goes to waste. In fact, something that our council has approached us allotmenteers about is actually if we have surplus food, can we donate it to the community fridge as well, which I also think is a great idea. I think my wife also said there was a load of Jerusalem artichokes down there yesterday, which she very nearly got, but luckily she didn't because I came home with a huge bucket full of Jerusalem artichokes as well. There's a video coming out this week about Jerusalem artichokes and what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of actually getting rid of Jerusalem artichokes because they are a bit difficult or a bit invasive and ugly looking in some ways. Oracle says that fridge is a brilliant idea. We have nothing like that. It's community run. It's literally run by volunteers. And they're trying to raise £5,000 by November the 29th, I think it is. And they're a bit short, but it's to stop food going to, I think it is a great idea, stop food going to waste. And trust me, half this food that we get, there's nothing wrong with it. Andrew says, sorry, Rich, got to go for now. Have a good evening, everyone. Thanks for your company this past hour. Thank you, Norris. Excuse me, I'm very tickly throat because I'm not drinking anything. Thank you so much, Andrew, and we'll see you again next week, I hope. Nicholas says, most supermarkets in Cornwall goes to food banks now in Cornwall. Yeah, this isn't a food bank. This is a community fridge. Anybody can use it. It's not for food poverty. It's not for those that are starving, although those are able to use it. It is purely to stop food going to the tip. It's a real big bugbear of mine. My job, my day job is a refrigeration engineer, as most of you know. I see how much food gets thrown away because the fridge has gone down. It's eye-watering, and it's very, very scary where there's people who are hungry in this world. Trust me, 10 kilos of tomatoes, fresh tomatoes, still on the vine. And when I say 10 kilos, that's after we took them off the vine. But these tomatoes were still on the vine. They were still perfectly good. We just couldn't. They just had to get rid of them. I don't know why the supermarket had to get rid of them, but it did have to. I've just thought of something else. I've made a note a couple of weeks ago on one of my whiteboards about Feed It Friday, which was, if I remember correctly, Rebecca's idea to remember when to feed our plants. And that's something actually that we probably could keep a track of on this notebook when we feed our plants as well. Yeah. Feed It Friday. I still like Feed It Friday. Jenny says, we went to the fundraiser for our community fridge. I'm sure they said in the past year they have stopped 13 tons of waste going to the landfill. Amazing. I too hate food waste. Trust me, I wouldn't. I can well believe it. Again, because of my day job, I see a lot of food going, and in some ways it's got to go in the bin. A fridge goes down. They can't necessarily sell it. It's bureaucracy, basically red tape getting in the way. But the fact that they can still use it, I think it's still wrong. The local food bank has now started charging for food instead of being free. Now that the food is not going to those that need it, I have stopped donating. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Digwell. When it comes to the local food banks, that whole idea of a food bank, as I understood it, was a community helping those who are less well off and who cannot afford to eat. I've always disliked that they would own our ones anyway, our local ones would only take tin foods. I would be happy to donate fresh food to these if I've got an excess of tomatoes, for example, which is very rare because we use a lot of them. But donate a lot of these excesses, a lot of these extra cucumbers or courgettes. I would happily give them to food banks if it were going to the right places. That being said, as soon as they go to a community fridge like we have, then go to down the tip or go to waste. Again, vegetables and stuff, in anything that's waste here goes in our compost bins. So we got plenty to do that. Talking of compost bins, if anybody's had any experience with bokashi, can you let me know what you found of it? I'm interviewing a guy on Wednesday about bokashi compost bins, and I'd love to try and have a few questions from people who have had experience with bokashi composting. At this point, I just want to ask you all, if you are enjoying this live show, having a lot of fun, don't forget to give us a thumbs up or a like, depending on what you are watching on. Added to that, if you are new to this show, don't forget to subscribe or follow, depending on where you are watching again. And don't forget to click the notifications so that you know when we go live. We always go live at the same time every Sunday, 6 p.m. GMT, but we may do some extras during the week during the summer, or some points we may do a few surprise ones. Jenny says, "Oh, Digwell, that is terrible. How can they charge? That is disgusting. You have to qualify to get a food bank voucher. It's hard enough as it is, and then to face charges." Yeah, yeah, yeah. It used to be that my food would be divvied up. Mary likes tomatoes. Pete's family will have the spuds, etc., etc. Yeah, I think that's right. I do think that's right. There are. I mean, I've got a bit of a weird thing with food banks in the sense I know a lot of people say they never used to exist, but then in the past, I think communities were much closer. If somebody was struggling, people would donate to that person personally. And I don't think that happens so much anymore. I think we're not so, our community isn't so tight anymore that these things have to happen instead. Idaho says my local food bank doesn't want any fresh produce. Will accept canned foods with best by dates and at least 6 months in the future. Yeah, it's just so wrong, isn't it? It is just so wrong. I think local food banks should be. I get why they can't accept fresh produce, but it would be better if they did. Um, Now, if I had a food bank, let's say I won the lottery, I would actually set up a food bank, but it would be like a community garden food bank. So um, people can come along, they can learn how to grow their own food. We've got a garden growing food, and they can also take food away. That's how I personally would run it. If I won the lottery, that's exactly what I would do. Digwell says, now it is a queue of 4x4s waiting for a £3.50 box of veg. This is what's wrong with it. I mean, when I come to our community fridge, because it's not about food poverty, it's about stopping food going to the waste. And trust me, they are begging to get rid of it. Even come the end of the day, my wife, we don't take any more than what we need, but even then they're begging us to take it because it can still end up in the food in the bin because it's so people aren't using it enough, which is such a shame. But when it comes to food banks, which are purposely set up to stop people from going hungry, that's very wrong. Very wrong. Charging for food bank, that's shocking. Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Digwell says, yes, Richard. Now I give to my family and neighbours that need it and want it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Give it to your family, your neighbours, people who want it, need it. They may, I mean, in some ways, when it comes to family and neighbours, they may not necessarily need it, but it's passing it forward, isn't it? It's giving them fresh food that they then might pass on to others. Oracle says, what me off is you see people walking into a food bank smoking and have the best stuff on. A food bank should be for real people that need it. We don't know their personal circumstances. Can I just say that? I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying, but we don't know. They may have suddenly lost their job and all the stuff that they're wearing, they might have bought when they were in work and then they've lost their job. But I do get what you're saying. I do, it's the same as so many things that is wrong with this world. Stuart says, sorry, I lost YouTube. Food bank is meant to be for people on low income, not 4x4 drivers. Well, again, I'm trying to be fair here. A 4x4 driver may not necessarily be on a low income. It may be they had it before they lost their job and they cannot afford to get rid of it and maybe struggling to run it. We don't know. We don't know. Trust me, I know a lot of 4x4s that are the ropiest vehicles you would ever see, but that's all people can afford. Yeah, so I just want to say that. A reversed advent calendar is a wonderful idea. If you know a family who could benefit for a food item from the 1st to the 24th, the staples, treats, trimmings, I received one, warm hearts. Yeah, I do think, as many of us grow our own vegetables, fruit and vegetables, and I think we always have a surplus. I do feel, as something that grows our own food, we do have a bit of responsibility to share our surplus with those who are in need. And I remember in 2020 when we went. Do you remember 2020 when we went into that period called that lockdown? I remember I was saying then that any excess food that I put on a table out in front of our house and just said anybody can help themselves. And I felt that was me doing our community a favour, and I really wanted it to go to people who needed it. The trouble is, where I live, dare I say it, the people around here aren't exactly needy. It's the wrong place, and people who are needy aren't likely to walk around this area. Not being an NIMBYism, it's just the reality of where we live. What I should have done was taken it round to those areas that do actually need it. But again, we don't know what's going on in people's homes, so people could need it. Kate says there is another at my local. Oh, sorry, Digwell says to Kate, there is another at my local tabernacle, and it's shocking to see some of the people taking the free produce. If I could risk it, I would film them to shock you. And he goes on to say, I'm getting wound up. It is annoying, isn't it, with these food banks? That's why I want to be very clear that this, or where we got these tomatoes from, a few weeks ago we got a whole chicken, believe it or not, as well. That was one of the things they were giving away. It is to stop food waste. It is not to stop people going hungry, although they do want those people to come along as well. It is purely there to stop food waste. To me, it seems a bit, I know we've completely changed subject now, but this is kind of relevant with what we all do. For me, it seems a little bit backward that this food would be going to a landfill when there's so many hungry people in the world that could be benefiting from it. Just my personal take. Anyway, so I'd like to remind you, if you haven't done so, thumbs up, please. I think it was yeah. I can from here I can usually see who's thumbed us up on Facebook, and I don't think anybody's given us a thumbs up on Facebook yet. So perhaps we're not going out there. I don't know. It says we are. Digwell, food waste and food poverty are a different kettle of fish. I agree. Yeah, they are a very different kettle of fish. But there we go. We got a like on Facebook. Yeah, food waste and food poverty are a different kettle of fish, but they are one of the same problems. Well, why is we throwing food away when there's people hungry? I've got to get off my high horse now. In Northern Ireland, you get £115 a week towards a house. The benefits, you get 150 plus a week for a single man. I mean, benefits, it's very difficult when it comes to benefits because they're a safety net for those that actually need it. Yeah, Toby Stream, I'm sure the Birmingham food banks, you have to be referred to it. So I couldn't rock up and buy cheap food, for instance. I think it's the same with our local food banks as well, actually. I only know with what Amanda said because she obviously works in that area. But obviously I've never had to use a food bank, and I, touch wood, will never have to. The great thing about being able to grow your own food is I think it's so important to be able to not use a food bank, eat healthily and eat well by growing your own food. Stuart says, Too Good To Go is a good app to have as you pay a small fee for a good bag of food. Yeah, I have seen that Too Good To Go app around. And I think I did download it and use it. I've just never really put it into use. Kate, I'm not sure if there are things like this near you, but we have some community kitchens that might like the fresh produce. We have a soup kitchen that I'm going to approach to give my excess. Kate, fantastic. Please do give them some of your excess. I think this is one of the messages, I guess, that I'm trying to get across is as we are. I mean, I know I've got largish garden, largish allotment. I grow a lot of our food. Being able to give it to some care homes and not care homes, sorry, some homeless shelters to make the most of it would be fantastic to to spread the love, to share the love. You know what I mean? Digwell, a lot of the time it is the authority that do not have the resources to redirect the surplus food to those who need it. Hence, it's all charities. You are right. You are right. It is down to costs. But the thing is, supermarkets, they have to pay for their waste to be taken away, including any business really, including their food waste. So if they're paying to take it away, surely they can pay a guy at the end of a shift to just run it along in one of their own vans to a nearby food bank. And me being logical here, perhaps it is cheaper for the rubbish refuse collection. I don't know, but to me, it just seems cockeyed. Perhaps if they'd done it, the government could come up with tax incentives or something. I mean, at the end of the day, food waste is a big problem, and we know landfill is also a big problem too. And Jenny says, too much bloody red tape. Don't I know it? I'm sorry. I hope this conversation is keeping everybody listening and enjoying it. I know it's completely off tangent from what we started off with, but food waste, as I said, is a big problem, and we all grow our own food to be more and more self-sufficient, and try and not ever go hungry. Turbo Stream says, next year I'll try and grow more so I can share some around. This year's weather means I'm just about feeding myself as a lot bolted. So you are very, very right. It does. There are factors that come into play. And I think the most important thing that, and some people may not agree with me here, but just hear me out with what I say. I do believe it. The most important thing is to look after yourself. Have enough for yourself. And I'm not saying hoard on to loads, but have enough to look after yourself before, or charity starts at home is the phrase, isn't it? And I take that term very lightly, because although I do believe charity starts at home, there is also an element that when you are comfortable to share some of that around as well. Hopefully I'm making myself clear there, not digging myself at home, digging myself into a hole. Get my words out. Digging myself into a hole there. And the boss of Tesco's is worried that someone will get ill from eating out-of-date food. Grr. That's a genuine concern. That is a genuine concern. I mean, again, we eat our homegrown stuff that doesn't have out-of-date dates on it, does it? Our carrots don't have out-of-date details. Our strawberries don't. And we don't worry about it, but we're not a business. Somebody getting ill from out-of-date food and suing Tesco's, I can understand why they're concerned about it, because it could cost them a lot of money. And not only that, somebody could also be potentially very, very ill from it. So I do understand there are some concerns. But again, it's that red tape that gets in the way. This is why we have food standards, and why food can only be food can only be out of the fridges for up to 4 hours, etc., before it has to go in the bin and stuff. Stuart says, I worked for a supermarket for a few years ago. We used to have lots of bread going in a bin. We tried to give it to an old people's home they would have loved to have, but red tape would not let them. It's just too much waste. Get rid of red tape is my answer to that. Get rid to the red tape for my answer to that. I used to, as an apprentice, I used to look after some 2 chains of supermarkets on their fridges. This has just reminded me of a story. And one of these supermarkets, I'm keeping it anonymous for very good reason, but I know my dad will know who I'm talking about here. One of these supermarkets used to actually, at the end of the day, give their out-of-date food, or food they couldn't sell, to a old people's home, and these nuns used to come every night to collect it. But this one particular day, they didn't have any food, and the nuns got a little bit upset, shall we say, that there was no food. I think they become so reliant on it, because it was such a regular occurrence, that the day they didn't have any food, they really struggled, and were generally upset for their residents. I always remember that story for some reason when they told me that. Chili Phil, we couldn't give courgettes away. We were flooded with them. Again, if people are hungry, they will eat it. They will take anything if they genuinely need it. But courgettes are a really good example of something that we grow in abundance and can certainly give away. I always say 2 plants is enough for me and my wife to feed us. Any more than that, we have to give them away. Same here, says Digwell, with the courgettes. The girls at work used to run away. No more courgettes. Absolutely. Idaho says some cities over here have yard waste bin for raked leaves, etc. A separate garbage collector truck picks up that stuff and takes it away to make community compost. Maybe some excess veg end up there. I know that sort of thing certainly doesn't happen. Well, does it? No, actually, possibly does. But they're always wrapped in, all our food waste is wrapped in cellophane and stuff anyway, which isn't compostable. But yeah, I think Dig the Dirt, was that the Netflix show Dig the Dirt? They talked about that community composting. Great idea. Brighton as well, they have a lot of community composting going on as well. Another really good idea. Jenny says, I take my spare seedlings also to residential homes. Many residents were keen to grow their own gardeners. Were keen grow your own gardeners and love growing a few bits in our home kitchen. Keeps them happy and healthy. Yeah, that's a very true point. I know I know a few care homes actually encourage their residents to do gardening as well. In fact, one of the care homes that's a customer of mine has its own allotment on site as well. So yeah, that's a very good point. This is where we can all be sharing our extra goodness, our excess, be it plants, food, and so on. So on. This is I know this not what we started off with, but the one talking point seemed to really have hit a chord with some of you guys out there about food waste. It's shocking how bad the food waste is, isn't it? As I said, what my wife comes back with, a whole chicken a couple of weeks ago, yum yums and stuff. I mean, yum yums aren't healthy. Don't get me wrong, but 10 kilos of tomatoes. We've had a whole pumpkin last week, I think it was as well, which I wasn't happy about because we got so many pumpkins to use up. Yeah. No, as I say, I do think charity begins at home, and we do have to look after ourselves first and foremost. So I wouldn't necessarily go without food to help somebody else out. But yeah. Turbo Extreme says it's been a good chat this week. What's the topic for next week, Richard? So I feel a bit bad after this conversation talking about this, but your gardening Christmas list to Santa. Just gonna go through a few ideas from you guys, a few of my own ideas as well, of what. Sorry, I can hear some dogs barking. It's not Roxy, she's indoors. Just want to find out what you guys would like to find under your Christmas tree, and it can be, one really gardening related, of course, or something you're going to use in a garden. So. And why it's going to be related to gardening, that is. So, but it can be big presents and a load of small presents. Don't feel there's any restrictions on anything like that. I mean, for example, one thing that when Amanda asked me what I wanted for Christmas, the only thing I could think of was a weather station, which is what she's getting me, and a second monitor to go in the greenhouse. Digwell says ditto. Not sure what that means. Chinny Phil says, but it's still November next week. Far too early. You are right, but it's the last weekend in November. On Thursday afterwards, it will be December, and it's less than a month to go to Christmas. That's, to me, where I wouldn't do it before the 25th of November. It's after the 25th of November, so I feel it's safe to start mentioning Christmas. Main reason being is that people are struggling financially this year and getting a few ideas just to have a bit of fun with. And then, your partners might be watching and you come up with something and it's a subtle hint to them of what to get so they can plan just before payday as well, for most people, just before payday, so they can go and think about it. Nicola says some food banks now not taking raw veg as people say they cannot afford to cook, even potatoes. I think this can be educational as well as food costs. I agree. I do agree. I mean, you don't have to cook all the vegetables. Most vegetables can be eaten raw. Um, and there are other ways to cook things. I've known people to cook stuff in their washing machines and dishwashers, believe it or not. How big should the list be? As big as you want it to be. Just be realistic. I like the idea of a garden Christmas list. We'll look forward to getting lots of ideas. Yeah, it's what you would like to find under your Christmas tree. Digwell says, sorry, I thought you were joking when you asked us what we wanted from you, Richard. Oh, yes. Well, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You can you can ask for it. We'll call myself Santa for the night. Let's do it like that. I'll be Santa for the night, and these are things that you can ask. Nicola picked up 6 pumpkins for the chickens this week. Yeah, so much food waste that goes on. Boxing Day is 5 weeks today. Yeah, so yeah, 5. No, is that right? But Christmas Day is a Sunday, isn't it? Yeah, Christmas Day is a Sunday because we're going live on Christmas Day. So Boxing Day is 5 weeks tomorrow. Christmas Day is 5 weeks today. Okay, doesn't seem like that bad. I've been on the food bank queue. It's a hard life, and I vow never to get to that point again. Sharing our food really helps. It's important, and all the banks need everyone to keep talking and donating. I agree. You know, I've never been on the food bank. I'll probably get criticised for being a. No, I won't say it. I won't say it because I'll get criticised for that as well. But I do think it is important that food is such an important part of our lives, and that is undervalued. So I'm going to leave that. Boxing Day, my favourite day, says Ballycillian. Indeed, it's a lovely day, isn't it? Boxing Day. Turbo Stream. I now cook my beetroot in the slow cooker, and I cooked a chicken breast a few weeks ago in it. We love our slow cooker. We always got a slow cooker going for something or another. Digwell says I haven't put my clock back yet. That's why he's thinking it's 5 weeks to 5 weeks today till Boxing Day. It's 5 weeks. 5 weeks till Christmas. 5 weeks till Christmas. That's coming around quick. Coming around quick. But as I said, we are going live on Christmas Day. We're going to try and do another quiz for. I know some of you probably got family and stuff, so I'm not expecting everybody to be here. But if you can make it, we'll have a bit of a Christmas quiz, bit of a pub quiz on a Christmas day. I might even have a couple of glasses of cider, so that might give me a little bit sozzled while we're doing it at the same time. So that might be entertaining. But obviously, as I say, if you are on Christmas Day, if you have got family and you're busy, that's fine. I'm not offended by that. So I keep the routine up of going up 6 o'clock every Sunday. Right, well, I think we are there. It is 7:30. We've been going for an hour and a half again. Very interesting chat. I've got to say, thanks so much for your ideas for this notebook. I'm going to go away and put it all to do all together, etc. I may even make it my version of this notebook downloadable if anybody wants to check it out as well. And the talk, I've just seen Bill and Val's allotment has joined. Hello, lovely to see you. We were talking about our local community fridge. I don't know if you've been involved in that at all, but we were talking about that a little bit earlier. Yeah, the quiz last year, we had a lot of fun with that. I think we did that on New Year's, if I remember correctly, but this year we're going to do it on Christmas Day, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's just quickly, so Stuart Jackson Q&A. We're just trying to sort out the signal issues and what have you. I was talking to Lee about this the other day. I've got to talk to Stuart as well. Digwell, if you want me to do a question for the quiz, give me a shout. Will do. Don't worry about that. Ballycillian, for me, Boxing Day is the start of the new season. So my onion seeds. Yeah, that might be something we do as well. I think I'm home alone on Christmas Day. Nicola, please come and join us then. 6 o'clock on Sunday, we'll go live. but please do come and join us. Bye, everyone. From Turbo Stream. Nicholas says, thanks for a great evening. Thank you for having us. Stuart, thank you for another great live show. See you all next week. Kate says, lovely chat again. Looking forward to next week. Have a great one on all. Thank you, Kate. Jenny said, thank you for a great chat. Idaho, it will be a quiet, cozy day. Please do join us then. Please do join us. Bye all. See you next week. Bill and Vale says, we give to local food hall by us. That's a food bank, if I remember correctly. There's we'll probably follow this discussion up again. Alison O'Brien says, great show tonight. We'll probably follow this discussion up about the food banks, etc., a little bit later on. Right, I'm going to close this up, just get myself set up. I'll be back again next Sunday at 6 for another live show. Christmas gift list. Get it ready to go. See you again next time. Until then, please take care.